Boys and girls, today I'm going to talk about 8 habits that I personally have been doing myself for the past few years that have really helped me continue making progress and achieve my goals. Sometimes your habits have to be directly related to your goal, and other times they have to just improve your life. Through having a higher standard quality of life, it becomes much easier to keep your mind on the go, continue making progress and be successful. Before we start, I just want to point something out. A lot of people misunderstand what success actually means. As people, we always have goals in mind, and we think that if we were to get that goal, we would be successful. However, sometimes we don't realize that what makes us feel more successful is actually the chase to the goal instead of actually getting to the goal and being there. I'll give you 2 quick examples from my personal life that I thought as soon as I achieved my goal, I would be on another planet. And actually, it's quite the opposite. You feel a little bit blue afterwards because you realize that the journey to the goal was actually a lot more fulfilling. Number 1 was when I graduated uni. I had been working 3 years towards my nutrition degree, and I really thought the day that I get it and the day of that graduation, I would be fulfilled and I would have really ticked off a big goal that I had. And actually the day that I submitted my dissertation and the day that I graduated were probably some of the lowest days of my nutrition degree because now I felt aimless. Number 2 was when I stepped on stage for the first time. Again, for 3 to 4 months, I'd been dieting really hard. It was the most difficult thing that I have ever done, and it really taught me so much. And as soon as you step on stage, it is one of the most amazing feelings in the world. And as soon as you get off, you become extremely blue and you don't know what to do with yourself anymore. Sticking to a diet is hard, you tend to overeat, and then the food gets into your emotions, and things slightly cascade. And the first time, it genuinely took me probably 2 weeks to get back on track and know what to do with myself. Now I learned from this, and when I graduated from masters and when I did my second competition, it was incredibly different because I knew my success wasn't actually based off getting on the goal, but it was about the journey. Enough ramble. What I'm basically trying to say is base your feelings and your success on your daily progress. Even if your progress is less than 1%, it is still something more than yesterday. Don't think that as soon as you reach your goal, your life will be complete. You will have to set another goal, and it will feel much better chasing the second one than the first. Right, on to the habits. These are in no order. It is just 8 things that I do, strive to do daily, that I think stack up and make a world of a difference. Number 1 is a mindset habit, and it is to complain less. We live in a world where so many of our conversations with our friends are actually about complaining. We talk about our issues, we talk about what we don't like in our lives, we talk about what we don't like in other people, we hate. It is a very negative world, and that can make a very negative world and impact us very negatively. Think about it. If you're constantly thinking about negative things, how are you now supposed to do something good? You're most likely going to fall back on the negative and continue thinking that way. If you think something won't work, you're really not making your case better for making it work, because think about how terrible your mindset behind it is. Now, I do get that people do need to get rid of their emotions somehow, and all of us need to unload in a different way. However, there's a difference between stating something you don't like and finding a solution to a problem and simply just complaining. So, about 2 or 3 years ago, I remember my New Year's resolution was to stop complaining so much, because I remember I used to complain too much. And some of my friends were really kind and didn't really mention anything, but I had a few people that did mention something, and I immediately thought that, wow, what a shit person I am to be around. So I immediately decided to make a change. How I did that and how you can do that is every time you're going to make a complaint, make sure you follow that up with a solution. Unless you have a solution to a problem, don't complain about it. If you don't have a solution to a problem, then before sharing it with somebody else, sit down with yourself, write it down. Try and figure out if there is a solution to that problem. If there isn't a solution to that problem, now it's time to speak to your friends. But before you start, make sure you tell them, I'm not complaining. I'm simply looking to get some help on the problem that I have. Now, you've completely changed the whole entire conversation. And the purpose of it isn't for you to deload and complain, which you will do anyways. The purpose of it to solve the problem that is at heart. This small trick actually shifts the whole thing around. Your friends feel useful for being there for you, trying to help you, and are likely gonna get some dopamine out of helping you find a solution to the problem. Plus, you get to tell your problem, you get to activate your thinker, burn some brain calories, and actually probably make your life better tomorrow, or even the same day. Another great thing about sharing this with your friends when you have a problem is that now they've heard your solution. So you would be an absolute idiot if you don't follow up on your solution and then you get to complain about it again. So you've just put yourself at a greater risk for success because you don't want to look like an idiot. It's simple and effective, and it really just is a mind trick. Now, there will obviously always be days where we just need to deload a little bit, we need to complain a little bit. First of all, package that as a deload, a de-stress, not complaining. And second of all, try and strive a balance. Usually 80-20 is a pretty good balance. Try and complain only 20% of the time. If you start complaining a lot more, there is an issue at heart, and it usually is within you, so it needs to be fixed. As soon as you start complaining less, you will notice how much brighter, positive and fruitful your life will be. My next habit that I've been probably doing for the longest actually is drinking half a liter of water as soon as I wake up. Now the reasons behind this is usually we don't drink any water while we sleep and we breathe out a lot, obviously. This dehydrates us. Further, on top of the fact that most of us avoid drinking water right before bed because we don't want to get up all night and go to the toilet. It's fucking annoying. And I'm telling you this as somebody who always has to get up at least once. The nights where I don't get up at all, that is golden sleep. And let me tell you, they happen maybe less than 10 times a year, which is a bit unfortunate, but I do drink a lot of water. So as soon as you get up, make sure the first thing you do is rehydrate with a large amount of water. Another great reason why you should be doing this is because I'm assuming most of us are going to have cold water. And if that is literally the first thing that you do and cold hits your lips and mouth, you will get a shock. You can't help it. You get a sensory shock, which wakes you up. And you get that energy much quicker. So if you have very slow mornings, I used to have very slow mornings. That is a great little tip to get you to wake up earlier. And simply, most of us don't really drink enough water. So getting half a liter as soon as you wake up already puts you 1/4 down from what you are supposed to get throughout the day. So it's literally a win-win-win in every aspect. Plus the fact that it's just so easy to do. My next habit, which is also in the morning, is simply ignoring your phone as soon as you get up. There is no need for you to pick up that phone and immediately start looking through messages, start reading stuff, opening social media. Remember what we spoke about in the last video? Remember what we spoke about in one of the Remember what we spoke about in one of the previous videos. Constantly being on social media can really increase stress because you're comparing yourself, because you're seeing things that you don't quite want to see. And it doesn't even have to be from comparison. Imagine you wake up and the first thing you see that is some terrible news happened. You're so sensitive in those first initial minutes of the day, which means you should do your best to make them as positive as you can to set the day forward. Because after half an hour, 45 minutes, you're already going to be on the right track. And again, if you have very slow, sluggish mornings, it doesn't make sense for you to start brain rotting immediately as soon as you get up. One way you could do this is simply by setting the phone away from you. This is also supposed to be beneficial because your phone releases EMF waves, which aren't great for your mind. So putting the phone far away from you means that as soon as you wake up, it's not going to be the first thing that you grab. Which actually takes me to my third habit that I've been doing for a very long time as well. Probably about 7 to 8 years. And that is, as soon as you wake up, you get up. So if you put the two and two together, if your phone is far away from the bed and you have an alarm because you have to get up for whatever you're doing, you're going to have to get up to switch that alarm off, which is simply forcing yourself to do something else uncomfortable, which you know will be beneficial. Remember, these habits aren't going to come naturally to you, so you are going to have to put in a little bit of effort to make them happen, and you're going to start off very slowly. So if you setting your phone away from you helps you get up immediately and not look at the phone immediately, then you've got a win-win situation. Getting up immediately as soon as you wake up helps you in two ways. It gets the blood moving so fast that you get energized. It also slightly puts you in a stressed state, which can up cortisol. And guess what? I know we label cortisol as a really bad thing, but actually we need cortisol to function. And cortisol, it's extremely necessary in the mornings. So if you can manage to increase that cortisol slightly in the mornings, which helps you get up, have better cognition, be more productive, it makes sense that you do that. Now, this stress state that I'm talking about isn't the same state as you overthinking or being anxious about something. It's more of a physiological stress state. But again, it simply helps us function better. If you immediately get up out of bed as soon as you wake up, also means you're not giving yourself enough time to make excuses about why you should sleep in a little bit longer, why you should twist and turn. You simply just get it done. And if waking up is hard for you, as with many hard things, does it not make sense to do it first and do it quick? If something was difficult and we absolutely dreaded doing it, but we know we have to do it, doesn't it make sense to get it done as quickly as possible? And now, if you are one of these people that absolutely dreads getting up in the morning, there is probably some other tiny minute issues that we would have to fix, because that's not quite normal. However, this tiny habit focuses on something else, but it should still make your mornings faster, more energized, and less painful. And while we're at the topic of waking up and mornings, the last habit that's related to this is as soon as you get up, your first thing is to get fresh air. Now I'm lucky enough to have a garden. The first thing I do is step outside, go to the garden, breathe in the fresh air. In England, it's pretty much cold all year round, except the heat waves that we get in the summer. And then I have my water, and then I do my business in the toilet, and then I go on my phone. Can you notice the pattern of how most of my habits that I'm telling you are based around in the mornings? That should really tell you how much I absolutely dreaded mornings a few years ago. It was one of the worst things. So I've really situated my efforts on the morning so I can make it as less painful as I possibly can and as productive as I possibly can. Anyways, back to the habit. Why should you get fresh air as soon as you wake up? First of all, if you sleep with your windows closed, the air in your room tends to get a bit stuffy. Especially if you sleep with somebody else and not alone, it gets even more stuffy. There's nothing better than really getting that fresh air hit, especially when you're tired. The second thing about it is outside there is sun, and natural sunlight, guess what, increases cortisol. Your cortisol is lowest during sleep. Remember what I said a few minutes ago? As soon as you get up, you should be aiming to get that cortisol as high as you can, so it can wake you up, make you feel energized. This is one of the few times where being a little bit stressed is actually quite helpful. So if you're lucky enough to have sun, you get up, you see the beautiful sun, you get sunlight, you get your cortisol up, get fresh air, whether it's cold or warm, it's a difference in temperature, which puts your senses at work, which also wake you up. You drink your water, you avoid the phone, and now you have one of the simplest and most effective wake-up routines to really get your day started well. If you get your day started well, most of your day will go even better. Enough with the wake-up habits. Next on the list, I have a little bit more of a mindset habit that I tend to do. And this is actually a mindfulness practice that I just simplified a little bit and I try and keep in my daily routine. And this is simply noting my feelings down. And I don't actually mean getting a pen and paper and noting them down on the pen and paper, which you can absolutely do. It's just I feel that has a bit too much friction. And the point of this is to be mindful. So I note my feelings down in my head. Now, what does this mean? Let's just say my bike got stolen, which has happened multiple times in London. Before I react, I try to think logically. However, this is a situation where you might be quite emotional. So what can we do? Well, first in your head, try and note down what you feel. Literally with just one word, note down the feeling. So that could look like upset, annoyed, disgusted, worried, and maybe others, depending on how you internalize the situation. Now that you've noted them down, you know what you're working with, and actually, just doing that little thing unloads some pressure of your mind. Oh, this is the only thing I have around me to give an example. But imagine this is your mind, and it's super heavy right now because something just happened. And usually to solve a problem and know what to do next, this has to be quite clear. But this is literally full to the top. Well, noting literally does this. Annoyed, disappointed, disgusted. Now this is about halfway full. So we have all this room up top to help us deal with what we're going to do next. Help us find a solution so we can solve the problem better. The reason why I love this habit is because it actually reduces so much daily stress that we don't even feel is building up. You keep taking things out of that box, which is your mind, which gives you so much more clarity and space, because ultimately this is just a cycle that keeps on repeating. There will always be stuff coming in, and you need to do your best to keep taking stuff out at all times. And remember what we spoke about complaining? This is quite similar. And you know what pointless complaining is in this example? Literally just getting that box and moving it about. It does absolutely nothing. Most times it actually could put something in instead of taking it out. That is why when you complain, you follow it up with a solution. So you've stirred it up a bit, taken it out. And that is why when you're slightly overwhelmed with emotion, you note them down. Now for the next two habits. These are a little bit more dietary focused. The first one is that every time I have a meal, I try and get about 200 grams of a protein source on my meal. Now what does this mean? I'm not saying get around 200 grams of protein from the source. I'm saying the source of protein that you consume will be around 200 grams. So what this could look like is if I'm having chicken, I'll be having 200 grams of chicken breast. If I'm having pork, I'll be having 200 grams of pork. If I'm having prawns, I'll be having 200 grams of prawns. You kind of get the gist. Now, of course, all of these protein sources have extremely different macros, extremely different protein content. However, 200 grams of a protein source is kind of the golden point where if you eat extremely lean protein sources, you get a lot of protein. And when you don't eat the leanest of protein sources, you still get a lot of protein. And oftentimes that will be at least around 30 grams of protein. Now, why do I do this? Well, I can calorie count probably really, really well. However, calorie counting is quite hard. And I don't want to calorie count unless I need it, unless I'm competing or for whatever other reason. If I'm not calorie counting, the other solution is to just memorize the content of protein in those foods. However, that takes time, and you have to calorie count for quite a while until you start memorizing things. So simply, as one of my daily goals is to get my protein in, and I can't be asked to calorie count or I don't remember what it is, a pretty easy thing to remember is just to get 200 grams of whatever protein source I'm eating. That way, about 90% of the time, I do hit my protein goal. Nowadays, protein is either extremely underconsumed or overconsumed from terrible sources like protein bars, protein shakes, and whatever other crap there is. So the reason I'm suggesting this, and I do this myself, is because it kind of makes you have more whole foods. It takes away the question of how much you should have, and it's such a simple thing that really gets you to your goals much quicker. Now, if you've never done this, start off by having 200 grams of a protein source in one meal of your day. In a few days, do that in 2 meals. In a few days, have that in 3 meals. This way, through such small effort, over a period of time, you've actually built a solid habit. But by the time you realize, you're always going to be looking for that 200-gram protein source on every meal. My next dietary habit is actually for you sweet tooth people out there. I'm not the biggest of sweet tooths until I go on a diet. And then everything becomes fucked. Especially towards the end, when comp day is coming. So when that happens, I try and restructure my plan to a way that I have a little bit more sweet in my diet to fulfill that sweet tooth craving. So I don't just end up binging on sweets or whatever. However, when you're really craving it, as soon as you have one, you might have another, and a third, and a fourth, and a fifth, and a sixth. And what ends up happening is you are unable to stop yourself. You've just eaten a shit ton of calories, and your deficit goes in the bin, and then you feel mentally fucked, which is one of the worst feelings that you could be in. So what I do is I eat a designated amount of sweet things that I've programmed myself. For example, 2 dates. And let me tell you, after those 2 dates, I want the whole box. But before I make my next decision, I chug a shit ton of water. That might actually be more than half a liter. There's been times where I've had a whole liter in one go. Do you know why? Because that immediately fills your stomach up so much with bulk that you don't want to think about putting anything else in your mouth. So that way, you've kind of just tricked yourself. Also, that incredibly fulfilling isn't comfortable. It's actually really off-putting, and it makes you remember what you're gonna feel like if you do end up binging. And that is not something that you want, especially if you've had trouble with binging before. So filling yourself up with water is probably one of the least dangerous things that you can do, and it'll really stop that craving. And before the last habit, if you have found any of this useful, of course, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like, maybe share it with somebody that you think this would be helpful to. And let's move on to the last thing, which is arguably the most bizarre one. But I think it's also quite effective if you do it right. And this is simply imagine that you're being watched 24/7. Now, what does this mean? Well, basically, if you are being viewed all the time, you're not going to carry out actions that could potentially embarrass you if somebody saw them, right? It's quite simple. So if you're really craving that sweet thing and you have one and you feel that you're just about to binge on something, well, imagine that people are watching you, your coach is watching you, your family is watching you, and they're about to see you act like a pig. Not quite so pleasant, is it? You need to act at the standard that you want others to see you at all times, not just when others are seeing you. If you are acting a certain way in front of other people or in front of camera or something along those lines, it's because you believe that is a better way to be than how you are. So if you think that's a better way, then why don't you just become that way? It's so simple, and literally none of us think of it that way. So instead of acting that way, be that way. And then you won't have to act. And then you will be able to be yourself without thinking about it, without thinking about the consequences, without thinking about if people will judge you. And the only reason why judging hurts is because internally, you probably judge yourself slightly too. So although this is the most bizarre habit, I think it low-key is the most important one. Yes, you probably will have some bad days where your standard will be at its minimum, but make sure that is a day that if somebody sees, you won't be embarrassed by it. I hope these 8 habits make sense, and I hope that you got something out of this video. If there are any habits that you have been doing for the past few years, make sure you drop them down in the comments, and maybe there'll be something that I put in my daily lifestyle. Thank you so much for watching. See ya.